I'm chasing to be like, one of the greatest or the greatest, you know what I mean? Again, that's not going to be up to me to decide, but that's where I want to be.
Winning the UFC title is a high mountain to climb. But what's even more challenging than that is defending the title against elite killers who are eager to take your head off. Only a few great UFC champions manage to win the title, clear the division, and eliminate all the competition by beating all the top contenders. Such an example is the Australian fighter of Macedonian origin, Alexander the Great Volkanovski, who went from being a rugby player weighing 200 pounds to becoming the undisputed UFC featherweight champion of the world. We will take a deep dive into Volkanovski's career and how he prevailed over the size disadvantage to earn his status in the UFC's GOATS list. Alex started his sports career as a rugby player, where he weighed 97 kilograms or 214 pounds. He played for the Warrior Gorillas, a rugby team in a semi-professional rugby league in the South Coast Rugby League competition. His 1.68 stature, or 5 feet 6 inches, wasn't an issue to stop the young Volk from tackling enormously big rugby guys, considering that he trained in Greco-Roman wrestling at an early age, even winning a national title as a 12-year-old. He played as a front rower and even enjoyed a relatively successful career in the sport. While being a rugby player, he won the 2010 Mick Cronin Medal as the league's best player and led his team to the 2011 Premiership, where he was acknowledged as man of the match after his team Warilla won the grand finale against Gerringong. Regardless of that relative success, tackling rugby players and scoring touchdowns weren't satisfying Volk's appetites enough, so he decided to leave rugby at 23 to focus on an MMA career. Volkanovski started training in MMA relatively late, at 22, but transitioning from rugby to MMA wasn't as hard as it seemed. Even though these waters were new for Volk to explore, his Greco-Roman wrestling credentials and clinching huge rugby guys greatly impacted his smooth transition to MMA and contributed in a big way. Thanks to the grappling techniques he learned from Greco-Roman wrestling, mixed with the explosivity, cardio, and strength he acquired from rugby, he rapidly became a great offensive wrestler and a good counter-striker with a powerful overhand right. That's the truth, even though McGregor would call him a slappy wrestler with an overhand right. Remember that the young Volk used to weigh 97 kilograms, or 214 pounds. Considering that, he didn't just cut all that weight to compete at featherweight. Instead, he had to adjust, fighting in welterweight and middleweight divisions before slowly cutting weight and adjusting to the division where he now rules, the featherweight. Volkanovski immediately realized that his true passion lies in MMA, so he decided to leave rugby forever to pursue an MMA career. He started his MMA career as an amateur at middleweight, with a record of 4-0 before turning professional in 2012, when he fought Gerard Voigt and won via unanimous decision. Getting Dana's attraction and signing with the UFC was quite difficult for the Australian fighter. Despite winning the Pacific Extreme Combat or PXX title, 2 Australian Fighting Championships AFC featherweight titles, he was still out of the UFC's signing radar. However, there was a hidden secret of how Volk finally managed to put his name on the table. The secret was the thousands of Macedonian fans he had back then. Volkanovski's family originates from the small village of Beranci, a village in the city of Bitola region, which is in the Republic of Macedonia. The city of Bitola was founded by King Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great. Can you see the connection? Why he changed his nickname to the Great? His initial nickname back then was the Hulk. By changing his nickname to the Great, not only he reminded the world where he came from, but he gained the love and support of thousands of Macedonian fans worldwide. His name was all over Macedonian news and newspapers. To get UFC's attention, he launched a campaign, asking folks to comment on every video related to MMA with the hashtag #SignVolkanovski. Tens of Macedonian sites on social networks like Facebook accepted that campaign and asked fans for support. Surely enough, his popularity jumped to another level, so he would later sign with the UFC, which would change his life forever. By the time Alex got to the UFC, he had gained enough fighting experience to run through anyone they put in front of him. Starting from a wrestler with a good overhand right, he quickly turned into a complete martial artist, and soon enough, his stand-up became as good as his wrestling. Volkanovski made his UFC debut in November 2016 against Yusuke Kasuya at UFC Fight Night 101. Volk was the superior wrestler by controlling the Japanese fighter on the ground before finishing him in the second round via TKO. His debut was pure domination, indicating that he possesses a power nobody should reckon with. Interestingly enough, This fight took place at lightweight. Nevertheless, right after the fight, Volk announced that he would move to featherweight, a division that he would make his home. He won the next 2 bouts unanimously, displaying his power and dominance in the octagon before the UFC matched him against the undefeated Canadian prospect Jeremy Kennedy. Although many thought that the Canadian fighter would make Volk run for his money, he wasn't a match for the more superior fighter who dominated him over the fight before the TKO finish at the end of the second round. Alex got another unanimous decision victory on his record against Darren Elkins, a fighter known for his endurance and ability to absorb damage before the UFC put his credibility on the line when they matched him against one of the best featherweights of all time, Chad Mendes. If there were doubts about whether Volk could compete with the best, now was the time to prove the doubters wrong. Chad Mendes was a 3-time title challenger, always on top of the game. His only losses were caused by legends like Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, and Conor McGregor up to that point. In a back-and-forth fight full of unpredictability and excitement, Alex managed to overpower Mendes and finish him with punches late in the second round. And now was the time for the biggest challenge of his career. And what more significant challenge than the King of Rio himself, Jose Aldo? Aldo is arguably the best featherweight of all time, and to be the best, you gotta beat the best. Winning fights and climbing to the top is one thing, but beating a legend like Aldo is something completely different and would emphasize your name like nothing else. There was something that Volk knew very well, and he even agreed to fight in Jose Aldo's house in Rio de Janeiro. This fight was relatively different than the previous one against Mendes. Still, he beat the legend via unanimous decision in a contest where it wasn't hard for the judges to decide who was the winner. There wasn't a finish, but a statement was made. Volkanovski was now knocking on the title challenge door. By the way, if you've enjoyed our videos so far, please press the like button. The UFC featherweight champion at the time, Max Holloway, seemed unstoppable. He beat Jose Aldo twice, and fans and journalists, including Joe Rogan, considered him the greatest featherweight fighter of all time. Max did not ask for that reputation, he earned it. The height and reach advantage between Holloway and Volkanovski were enormous, and many believed that Max would pick Volkanovski apart in the stand-up before finishing him in the later rounds. Their first fight occurred on December 14, 2019 in Las Vegas. Once again, Alex proved his doubters wrong by outclassing the champion in the stand-up exchanges, beating him on the scorecards, and making a point against the popular belief that he is just a wrestler. Suppose Holloway was considered the best striker in the division. What did that make Volkanovski after beating him in his own game? Since Max is a fan favorite, many UFC fans wanted to see an immediate rematch, hoping that this time their favorite fighter would win. Unfortunately for them, in a very close fight, Volk had his hands raised at the end, beating Max on the scorecards again, this time by a split decision. Although Alex started slowly in that fight and lost the first 2 rounds, he made some crucial adjustments mid-fight that granted him the victory. That was a championship mentality displayed at its best. Now, nobody could doubt the great anymore. In his second title defense, Volkanovski was scheduled to meet the submission specialist Brian Ortega, and before their bout, they were coaches for the Ultimate Fighter 29 at ESPN+. Ortega is a feared jiu-jitsu wizard, and everyone knows that one mistake is all it takes for Brian to win a fight at any moment. When they met in the octagon, Ortega got Volk into a deep-mounted guillotine choke, and it seemed like this would be the end of Alexander's reign as a champion. To this day, people are trying to figure out how Volk could escape from such a position. That was a choke that would make anyone tap, anyone but Volkanovski. If that wasn't enough, shortly after escaping the guillotine, Alex was caught in a triangle choke and escaped that too. That's something you cannot train. You either have it or you don't. Was it that Alexander the Great gene that helped him withstand? Regardless of any explanation, that was a pure display of a warrior's heart, and in the Warrior's Code, there is no surrender. Besides those 2 submission attempts, the fight was one-sided in Alex's favor, reigning supreme again. And of course, the biggest match in Volk's career was his next title defense against the Korean Zombie. He made the Korean fighter look like he had never fought before, scoring 3 knockdowns before finishing the fight via TKO in the 4th round. The scariest thing about this newly evolved version of Volk was that he made it look easy. And to close the door to any doubt about who is the better fighter between him and Holloway, they were scheduled to fight for the 3rd time. Max wasn't given a present, but earned the #1 contender spot again by beating 2 of the top featherweight contenders, Calvin Kattar and Yair Rodriguez. However, the 3rd fight wasn't even close. It was a complete domination by Alex, who closed any doubt about who the better fighter is between the 2. On February 12, 2023, the Great was granted a chance at Makhachev's belt in the UFC's lightweight division. an opportunity to join the Double Champs Club. In a back-and-forth fight where both fighters had good moments during the bout, the Russian edged Volkanovski on the judges' scorecard via a controversial unanimous decision victory. According to many, Alex won that fight and was robbed, but nevertheless, he remained the UFC Featherweight champion since this fight took place at lightweight. Alexander Volkanovski is a pound-for-pound great, who not only won the UFC title but also cleared the division by dominating everyone he fought at featherweight. By displaying dominant performances in the octagon and outclassing the competition, slowly but surely, he is on the way to cementing his status as a featherweight GOAT. And what do you guys think? Do you consider Volkanovski as one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time? How do you think a rematch between him and Makhachev would go? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you would like to watch more videos like this, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe to our channel.